Hello. You might remember that some time ago I was working on a UVW1400AP BetacamSP recorder that had been kindly donated to me, but unfortunately it had fried its own electronics and was beyond repair. Shame really, they're quite nice machines. I wouldn't mind another one. Oh, what's this? Oh. Let's open this great big box and see what we have. Let's see what's in here. This has been sent to me by our viewer Alex, who has been kind enough to send me some other nice equipment in the past as well. Okay, it has a label on the top, error code 20-111. It's UVW1400AP RGB. Does that mean it does RGB rather than YUV? Look into that later. But it has a composite video output and S-video output. So I've connected composite video to the TV. This takes two sizes of tapes. This is the analog machine, so that's a BetacamSP tape. That's correct for this machine. That's digital. It's the right size, but it would just spit it out because it doesn't take digital tapes, and it also won't take oxide tapes for the early form of Betacam, which used effectively Betamax tapes. So let's just power it up initially and see what we get. BetacamSP, everything looks okay. I'll have a quick look at the head hours to see if this machine has got some service life left in it. So I've got it connected to the superimpose output, so we'll see on there rather than have to do everything on this little screen here. So menu, and I'll find my way through the hours. Oh, it's hours meter. Get out of menu. Hours meter. Everything's times 10, and it says tape running T3 is 270 hours. You get two readings, one for resettable and one for from factory. So 270 hours is very low. Drum's been rotating for 340 hours, during which time the tape wasn't running, and total hours being on is 4,700. So it's been sat idling for a lot of the time. Right, that's absolutely fine. So it's a potentially low hours machine, but one of the things about these is, and I'm glad it's fairly low hours, is that the capacitors in the VU meter, the VU meter's electronics drive not just the display for the VU meter but also the front panel, and so there's a little power supply stage in there with some capacitors and regulator chips and things, and when the capacitors dry up the regulator can fail, and on my other machine, the 1400, it stuffed a high voltage into the control electronics of the front and blew it up, and that was the end of the machine. So I will check the capacitors in there despite the low hours on this machine later if I get the machine working. So we're fully expecting when we put this tape in to get a 20-111 error. But does it happen straight away when we put the tape in or when we try to play it? Let's have a look. Oh, it's not gone down. Oh yes, it has. It had to adjust the size. It's not laced. Right, okay. Eject. Tape is being ejected. Wait until this indicator goes off. So it's going to eject the tape. It realises it wasn't able to lace up. Okay. It didn't even sound like it was trying. It didn't sound like the motor was trying to lace up. Let's investigate. So the loading motor is there. I'll try and get you a better view. That's the loading motor, and it sounded like it was jammed or not being driven at all. So I'll give it a little nudge here because there's a sort of manual control on the other side over here. Is that seized? Let's see if I can. Look, it's lacing a bit. So what I'm going to do, if I switch it off, see if I can lace it up a bit. and then when I switch it on, it should unlace. And if that works, that proves then that electrically the motor's being driven. Alright, is that far enough? So now I'm just going to power it up and see what it does. Nothing. I was expecting it to drive back. Oh, it did. It did. So the motor's working. It spun up the head. Yeah, the head bearings grumbled a little bit, I thought. But maybe just be lack of use. Let's try again then, putting a tape in. No lace up. Isn't that strange? What I think I'm going to do is put it in and switch the power off and then manually lace it all the way up and see what happens when I power it up. It'll probably just unlace and eject the tape, but let's try it. No, that's not right at all. It's snagging the tape. It may have a little bit of tape damage. Caught the edge of the tape slightly. Let's try that whole process again. Do you know what? I don't think the tape's going fully down. No, the tape's not down properly. May not be a loading error. It could be a front loader error. Aha. Let's have a look at the cassette carriage. It's very easy to take out. Right, electrically disconnected the cassette carriage. You can even run these machines with the cassette carriage removed, and I just might in a moment. If you take the front door off a cassette, you can put the tape in and push it down in place and run the machine, and that is handily enough. I have a tape with the door removed for that very reason. So, taking the cassette carriage out for a second, I have a tape here with the door removed. So if I place that, of course that was a big tape. Oh, that's a nuisance. If the last tape I'd had in there was a small tape, the tables would be set up in the right place, but they're not. So we'll come back to that plan in a moment. Let's just have a look at this. Does everything look okay with a front carriage? It goes all the way to the end of these slots. Does it then go all the way down to the bottom, or does it jam? Seems to be jamming. I have a vague recollection of seeing this fault before. I'm not going to spend too long worrying about this, I think, because I have a spare cassette carriage in another machine, which really won't take me very long to find. So I think I'll go and get that and install it and see where we are. Okay, we have this carriage, which I think is in good working order. So let's just try that one first. Okay, we'll just see what it does, shall we? Much happier.
British was born in London. I think we can look back at programs like that now and we can go,
good.
How did that ever get through?
These didn't have any jog and shuttle control built in, but you could plug a control into here in the front panel and get jog and shuttle controls, and I've got one of those. So that appears to be in good working order. And what happens when you put a small tape in? Strangely, it thinks it's an oxide tape. It doesn't understand the ident holes on the bottom. Let's just do that. Hopefully the spools will go in, so it's set up for small tape, and then it'll immediately eject it. So it's gone down properly and ejected it. So now the spools are in. So that's proved that the mechanism is working. And the error it comes up with on the display, oh, it's just flashing tape. I had definitely seen one previously say oxide tape, but that's fine, it's just flashing tape. So what's wrong with this? Should we have a look? It feels like the problem is at this side. So this plastic component is not jammed up on this side. Look, it's free to wiggle about. But this one seems to be jamming. There seems to be a spring come adrift over here, and I think that might be the problem. I'll get a closer shot of that for you. So looking here, we've got a toothed belt, top and bottom, and there's a metal lug at this end of a spring going across to a plastic lug at the other end. And we've found a spring up here somewhere on the other one. So let's have a look at the broken one and see if we can put the spring back. So here's our spring. So, oh, it's still connected to the metal lug, that's fine. But it's not just fallen off that plastic lug, has it? No. The plastic lug is broken. Yeah, so that would need, well, replacement, because we've got no chance of gluing that on with epoxy resin or anything, because this is a pretty thick spring. The forces on it are going to be, yeah, huge. I mean, I can't really pull it here. It's this really strong spring, so yeah, that's where it should be fitted, in there. But clearly we're not going to be able to fix this. This plastic piece that's broken off is part, I think, of the main, yeah, it's the whole side of the carriage. This whole carriage side here has that plastic lug on it. It doesn't look substantial enough for the job it's being asked to do, Sony. For a professional piece of gear, that's not your finest work. That piece of plastic really could have been built up a bit more, or maybe not plastic at all. There's a PCB on the other side of where that broken lug is. So the lug is here, and there's a PCB here. So it isn't as though I could just put a screw or something through to support the spring end. So I'm afraid this carriage is probably totaled. But at least we have identified what the cause of the breakdown was. Yeah, I would say, Sony, that that's a somewhat weak design. Alright, so we'll install the good carriage in the machine, and then we'll have a look at the capacitors behind the VU meters. Okay, we'll refit the known good cassette carriage. It does seem odd for a machine that's otherwise so well engineered, and especially the cassette carriage is beautifully built. It's designed to be really easy to take out and to work on, that they messed it all up with that spring support. Quick check to make sure that's all working before we then have a look at this VU meter. Okay, good. Let's take the front panel off. You have to be a bit careful. These switches can kind of fall apart on you if you're not careful. I've had that happen to me before, and I think it happened to okay, remind myself how to take this apart. And in here we'll find some surface mount capacitors. So we have 3 of 47 microfarad 35 volt capacitors in there, and I think it's best to just replace them as a matter of course. Now, I'm not sure if I can measure them in circuit, but we'll have a go. That's reading 102 microfarads, so that's presumably two of them. That's reading 48, so that's fine. That's 103, so they must be in parallel. No, they're not exactly in parallel because there's a transformer there. Anyhow, it looks like capacitors are good, but let's see if I've got something suitable to replace them with anyway. Okay, I think I'll install these so they'll have to sit somewhat higher, but there's plenty of room. These are Hitano, which I believe are sort of medium grade. They're not necessarily the very best, but they're not cheap Chinese junk either. From the EXR series, 105 Celsius. Okay, so I've replaced those three capacitors. You tell me, would you have done that, or would you have left the originals well alone? I just know that the havoc that they can wreak if these things fail is, I think, worth replacing them to be on the safe side. So there we have those three capacitors installed. I can put the lid back on now. They're sat at an angle such that the lid should fit nicely, and we can reassemble it onto the front of the machine. Right, a quick test before we reassemble the rest of the machine. Yep, all working nicely. These buttons can be a little bit fiddly to reassemble. You need to make sure they're lined up before you try to push it in. What I should have done was put all those switches to the bottom position before I refitted the panel, because otherwise the outer sleeve drops and makes aligning them that little bit harder. Now I mentioned I've got this remote control unit, a DSRM-10, which allows us to have jog and shuttle on this machine. At least it would. Someone's modified this cable, I'm sure it's supposed to be longer than that, and then I modified it some more when I went to demonstrate it to you. So I'm going to have to lengthen the cable a bit, I think, and fit a new plug on there. Right, so how do I get this apart? It's going to fall to pieces, I think, because I need to see the wiring in here. What would you do? How am I going to work out what the wiring is? There's going to be screening on here, and that's going to go to the outer conductor, but then I need to know which of these goes to the tip and the ring, and if I get them wrong I could blow something up, so I really need to get this right. Maybe I can tell, maybe there's still a connection through there. Maybe if I take it apart I'll be able to meter it before it falls to pieces completely. Yes, this is not the original cable, I don't reckon. Somebody soldered this on. The connections are marked V, S and G. G will be ground. So I'm on the ground. That's going to be the screen, isn't it? Okay. So we've got V and S. Do either of those make contact with anything without being shorted to ground? First, just check to see if it's shorted. Oh, it is. Okay, the tip. It's all a big shorted mess. Sometimes I can get the tip to not short to the body, so maybe I can work out which wire it is. It's the white wire S. And it's not presently shorted, so that looks valid. And then the next conductor would be V, but that is shorted. But yeah, we can be confident, I think. S is the end one. Still would like to get this apart though. So S is the white wire, so we reckon S, the white wire, goes to the tip. Well, there's no doubt about that. The worry is that what happens if this ground was not the metal sleeve. I mean, that'd be a strange way to wire it, but you know, you can't take it for granted. No, we're just going to have to assume that that's right. I want to change this cable anyway with something a bit longer. Let's get some twin screen. Okay, so if I've done this correctly, the tip should be the S, which I think is probably signal. The next one is V, which I think is supply. And the next one is ground. Right, I just need to secure the wire as it goes into the unit here, and I think that should secure it pretty good. Just check for shorts once more. Good. Let's confirm that that all works. To get basic operation there. Now if I plug this in, got jog and shuttle. Good. You know what feature this machine lacks is a standby button. There's normally a button you can press which takes it out of standby operation and takes some load off the head and spins down the head and makes the machine less ready. But you just have to wait for it to time out. But you can change the timeout settings, so I'll do that now. I'll go into the menu and there'll be an option here for tape protection from stop 8 minutes, much too long. I would like it to be, there we are, 30 seconds. And now, and then it goes into standby. Yep, and from still, again, I don't want that to be so long. 1 minute, I think. Right, so much shorter timeouts. So if I hit stop now, after some seconds, it will come out of standby. Much better. For my purposes. I should briefly mention some of the limitations and some of the features of these machines. Now, the reason I wanted a recorder, this is the 1400 and the 1800 is another recorder, I had one of those but it died, is that as well as the fact that you get VU meters, which you don't get on a player only model, the 1200 and 1400s, the 1200 and 1600s are player only, they don't have VU meters. I find that annoying. But also you have inputs on these and they can be useful because I can go, for example, from YUV to S-video using one of these machines. So I find that the inputs are useful. I'm not particularly likely to make any BetacamSP recordings, though I suppose it's handy to have the option to maybe make up a test tape or something like that. One of the limitations of this series is they only support linear audio. They don't do the AFM audio tracks. Now, my impression is that they weren't used massively, and usually anything that has AFM audio also had linear audio as well. But still, very occasionally it can be useful to have the extra audio tracks, and for that I would play back on a machine that supports them, such as one of the digital Betacams with analog capability like the UVW1400AP. Even so, I still like these machines, and I'm going to put this into service to replace a UVW1200 player only model which I presently have downstairs in my studio. And this having very low hours on it, it should give really good results. Occasionally I have found that with a very noisy tape, the output signal from one of these machines can be a little bit more kind to the recording, a little bit more subtle than the output of the digibeaters. Possibly because the digibeaters got more bandwidth, but these can have a slightly more pleasing image on a noisy signal. The 1200 and 1400 don't have a full digital time-based corrector. They only have a sort of image stabilizer. Actually, it works really well. But the 1600 and 1800, the 1800 is the top of the range, does have a full digital time-based corrector as well. I'm not sure that makes a difference for what I'd be using it for. Right, I hope you've enjoyed us working on this UVW1400AP. It's come out really well. If you know anything about that spring problem, have you ever been able to repair that? That might be something we could look at in the comments below. Right, I'll do plenty more content on audio and video technology in the near future, and occasionally some other subjects as well, and I've got something good coming up. Bye for now.